Texas Governor Rick Perry has made a number of headlines in recent weeks. First, it was his center stage clash with President Obama over the crisis on our border. Then, his campaign stop in Iowa stirring speculation about a 2016 presidential run. But late this week, news broke that the governor had been indicted on felony charges over alleged abuse of power. Joining us now from Austin, Governor Rick Perry. Welcome, Governor.
Good morning, Janet.
All right, we want to explain to folks what you're facing here. You've been indicted on 2 felony accounts, abuse of power. The grand jury indictment alleges this, that you, quote, with intent to harm another, intentionally or knowingly misused government property, and by means of coercion intentionally or knowingly influenced or attempted to influence Rosemary Lemberg, a public servant. She is the DA in Travis County. The head of the Texas Democratic Party said this, quote, Governor Rick Perry has brought dishonor to his office, his family, and the state of Texas. They're calling for you to step down. How do you respond?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand the details of this. And the DA, the highest ranking prosecutor in Travis County, who also has oversight for state officials, this individual was stopped driving while drunk. She had almost 3 times the legal limit of alcohol, 0.238, I believe is what it was. When you look at the video, not only of the stop, you look at the video of Ms. Lemberg when she was being booked into the county jail, the abusiveness, she was kicking on the doors, she was abusing the law officials, she had to be restrained. And when you look at that, and you have to make a decision on whether or not $7.5 million of Texas taxpayer money is going to go to the unit that she oversees, I very clearly, I very publicly said that as long as that individual was going to be running that agency, I had lost confidence in her, the public had lost confidence in her, and I did what every governor has done for decades, which is make a decision on whether or not it was in the proper use of state money to go to that agency, and I vetoed it. That's what the rule of law is really about, Shannon. And I stood up for the rule of law in the state of Texas, and if I had to do it again, I would make exactly the same decision.
Well, the special prosecutor in this case says he thinks you should take this seriously. He's looked at the law, he's looked at the facts, interviewed more than 40 people. You know that these charges on conviction could result in more than 100 years in prison. He's convinced the grand jury it is a different game with the jury. But is there any small part of you that's worried at all that that will happen?
Well, I certainly take everything I do seriously. The rule of law, in particularly, I take seriously. But let me just share with you. David Axelrod said that this was a very sketchy indictment. Professor Dershowitz, who is not exactly my cheerleader, said that it was outrageous. So I think across the board, you're seeing people weigh in and reflecting that this is way outside of the norm. This is not the way that we settle differences, political differences in this country. You don't do it with indictments. We settle our political differences at the ballot box. And I think, across the board, when you got David Axelrod and Harvard law professor Dershowitz saying the things that they said, I think it's pretty reflective of what we're looking at here. And I also want to say thanks to people like Rick Scott and Jeb Bush and Bobby Jindal and Senator Ted Cruz that have very publicly stated that they too think that this is way outside the realm of any type of thoughtful look at the laws in the state of Texas.
You mentioned the David Axelrod tweet. He said that the indictment seemed to him, quote, pretty sketchy. So you do have support from an unlikely source there. Now, something that you and Mr. Axelrod probably don't agree on is the issue of immigration. You've been very vocal about what's going on in Texas and have called the administration to task. They say now the numbers show that the influx of those unaccompanied children who are coming across the border illegally has dropped significantly. To what do you attribute that? Did you give the administration any credit for those numbers going down?
Well, here's what I know is happening. Almost 6 weeks ago, we surged into that area of operation with our Department of Public Safety, our Texas Ranger Recon teams, our Parks and Wildlife. We brought a real attention to the issue. We were sending messages back to Central America that you should not send your children here. They're not going to be able to walk across the border. We talked powerfully about surging the National Guard. into that area as well. So I would suggest to you that the issue here really goes back to that rule of law, if you will. We're not securing the border as the Constitution calls for us to. When you add the IRS scandal that's going on and the outside of the rule of law there, and then you look at what's happened in Austin, Texas with this grand jury, I think there is some extraordinary concern in this country about the rule of law not being followed, and too many things are being decided in arenas that shouldn't be decided from the standpoint of a government that's out of control. People want to get back to the rule of law and knowing with certainty that our border is going to be secure, that the IRS is not going to come knocking down their door looking for things, and that the NSA is not listening in on our phone conversations.